The restaurant had large glass windows that let sunlight pour in from the street. It was late morning, the time when the lunch crowd slowly began to arrive. Inside, soft music played low, mixing with the sound of plates, footsteps, and quiet conversations. For most customers, it felt calm and welcoming. For the staff, it was the start of another long and busy shift. Lena tied her apron tighter and took a deep breath. She had been working here for over a year, and she knew how fast things could change once the place filled up. Some days were smooth. Other days tested her patience. Still, she showed up every time with the same goal, to do her job well and go home knowing she tried her best. She moved between tables with practiced steps, holding a tray with drinks balanced carefully. Her uniform was simple, a light-colored dress with the restaurant logo stitched near the collar. It wasn't fancy, but she kept it clean and neat. To her, it represented work, effort, and survival. Tips from days like this helped pay rent, buy groceries, and send a little money back home. A couple waved her over, smiling as they asked about the menu. Lena answered politely, recommending the lunch special. She wrote down their order and thanked them before walking away. Nearby, the manager stood behind the counter, checking numbers on a tablet. Everything felt normal. And the front doors opened again. A group of 3 women walked in, drawing attention without trying. Their heels clicked loudly against the floor. Their clothes were expensive, their bags large, and their voices confident. The woman in front carried herself as if the room already belonged to her. She scanned the restaurant with a look that suggested she was judging everything she saw. The host greeted them warmly and led them to a table near the center of the room. It was a table that could be seen from almost anywhere. Lena noticed the group as she passed by, but she didn't think much of it at first. Guests like that came in often. Some were kind, others were not. There was no way to tell yet. Lena was assigned to that section, so a few minutes later, she approached their table with a polite smile. She welcomed them and asked if they would like something to drink. The woman in front looked up slowly, her eyes moving from Lena's face down to her shoes and back up again. She didn't return the smile. "Sparkling water," the woman said, her tone flat. "And make sure it's cold." The others ordered as well, barely looking at Lena as they spoke. Lena nodded, repeated the orders to be sure she had them right, and walked away. At the drink station, she filled the glasses carefully. She had learned that first impressions mattered, especially with customers who already seemed hard to please. She wiped the tray once more and headed back. When she placed the drinks down, the same woman picked up her glass, examined it closely, and frowned. "This glass has a spot," she said. Holding it up, Lena leaned in slightly and saw a tiny watermark near the rim. She apologized right away. "I'm sorry about that. I'll get you a new one." She reached for the glass, but the woman pulled it back. "No," she said sharply. "Just bring another. And be quick." Lena nodded again and went to get a replacement. She reminded herself to stay calm. It wasn't personal, she told herself. Some people just like to feel in control. As the restaurant filled up, Lena moved faster. Orders came in from multiple tables. Plates needed clearing. Drinks needed refilling. The noise level rose. Still, she kept an eye on the center table, making sure they were served on time. When she returned with the new glass, she placed it down carefully. "There you go," she said gently. "Please let me know if you need anything else." The woman gave a small, tight smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see," she replied. A few minutes later, Lena came back to take their food order. This time, the woman asked several questions, interrupting Lena more than once. She changed her order twice, then asked about substitutions that weren't on the menu. Lena answered everything as clearly as she could. She wrote fast, making sure not to miss anything. "So," the woman said suddenly, leaning back in her chair, "how long have you worked here?" Lena paused for half a second. It wasn't a strange question, but the way it was asked made her uneasy. "A little over a year," she replied. The woman nodded, as if storing the information. "Well," she said, "you should be more careful. This place has standards." Lena smiled politely, even though she wasn't sure what she had done wrong. "I understand," she said. As she walked away, she felt the familiar tight feeling in her chest. She had learned that some customers didn't see her as a person. To them, she was just part of the service. Still, she kept going. At another table, a man thanked her for the food and left a generous tip. Moments like that helped balance the harder ones. Lena reminded herself that for every difficult guest, there were kind ones too. But when she passed the center table again, she could feel eyes on her. The woman was watching her closely, whispering something to her friends. They laughed softly. Lena focused on her work. She refilled waters, cleared plates, and checked on orders in the kitchen. She was carrying a tray with appetizers when she felt someone snap their fingers behind her. She turned around. "Yes?" she asked. The woman gestured toward her empty plate. "We've been waiting," she said. "This is taking too long." Lena checked her notepad. "I'm sorry for the wait," she said. "Your order will be out shortly." The woman shook her head. "Unacceptable," she said. "Do you know who I am?" Lena froze for just a moment. She had heard that question before. It never led to anything good. "I'm sorry," Lena said carefully. "I can check with the kitchen if you'd like." The woman leaned forward. "My partner is a very important man," she said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "This restaurant exists because of people like us." A few customers glanced over. The air felt heavier. Lena felt her face grow warm, but she kept her voice steady. "I'll check on your order right now," she said. She turned and walked away, her steps a little faster than before. In the kitchen, she asked about the order and was told it would be ready in just a few minutes. She nodded and waited. As she stood there, she wondered why some people used power like a weapon. She didn't know who the woman was talking about, and honestly, it didn't matter. Everyone deserved respect, no matter their job. When Lena returned to the dining area, she noticed the manager watching the center table with concern. He caught her eye and gave her a small nod, as if to say he was aware. That helped. Just a little. Lena approached the table again, ready to explain the short delay. Before she could speak, the woman raised her hand. "Listen," she said, her voice sharp. "I don't want excuses. I want better service." Lena opened her mouth to respond, but the woman had already turned away, dismissing her. Around them, the restaurant buzzed with conversation, unaware that the calm surface was beginning to crack. Lena stood there for a second longer than she should have, then quietly stepped back. She didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. The restaurant was getting busier. By early afternoon, more people filled the tables, and the clatter of dishes, laughter, and conversation grew louder. Lena moved quickly, carrying plates, refilling drinks, and checking on orders. Her movements were automatic by now, like second nature. Every table deserved attention, but she couldn't help glancing at the table in the center. The woman who had been difficult before seemed to be watching her even more closely now. Her friends whispered quietly, glancing at Lena and occasionally pointing toward the servers. Lena felt the pressure, but tried to focus on her work. When she approached with a tray of fresh appetizers, she noticed the woman's expression had changed. Her eyes narrowed, her lips pressed together, and her hand tapped impatiently on the table. Lena placed the plates carefully, making sure each item was positioned just right. "This one is supposed to be hotter," the woman said, pointing at one of the dishes. Her tone was sharp, but not overly loud. "I'm so sorry," Lena said, keeping her voice calm. I'll take it back and have the kitchen heated again." The woman waved her hand dismissively. "No, no, just leave it. I'll eat it like this for now." Lena nodded. She wanted to stay professional. She didn't want to make a scene, even though she felt a small sting of frustration. Her uniform felt heavier on her shoulders now, like it carried the weight of the woman's judgment. She stepped away and returned to other tables, clearing dishes and serving drinks, her mind still half focused on the center table. A few minutes later, something happened that Lena hadn't expected. A small tray tipped slightly as she walked past the table to place an order for another section. The tray was balanced, but the woman reached forward and grabbed it without warning. In the process, part of Lena's uniform brushed against the woman's hand. "Watch where you're going." The woman snapped, her voice rising sharply. Lena froze. She hadn't touched anything or anyone intentionally. She tried to explain, but the words felt stuck in her throat. "I'm sorry. It was an accident," she said quietly. The woman's eyes flashed. "Accident? That's not good enough." She leaned back in her chair and gave a small, almost cruel laugh. "Do you even know how to do your job?" Lena's hands trembled slightly as she straightened her apron and took a step back. Her face felt warm, her cheeks burning. She wanted to remain calm, but the public nature of the confrontation made her nervous. Nearby customers had begun to glance over. Some whispered quietly among themselves. Others pretended not to notice. The woman's friends giggled softly. Lena felt a twist in her stomach. She hated that anyone else's amusement made the situation worse. Still, she tried to focus on her breathing. In moments like this, she had learned to rely on calmness as her shield. "I'm doing my best," Lena said softly, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. "I can get you another plate if you'd like." The woman's hand shot out and grabbed Lena's apron. In a single swift movement, she yanked. The fabric tore loudly near the seam, leaving a small but visible rip. Gasps echoed from nearby tables. Lena froze, mortified. She instinctively covered herself with her hands, her heart pounding. The woman leaned back, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. "Oh, look at that," she said, laughing now. "I told you she's careless." Lena took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. She had never been treated like this in her life. Her uniform wasn't just clothes, it was her professionalism, her dignity on display. And now it was ruined in front of strangers. I'm sorry," Lena said, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean for this to happen. Please, I'll get a replacement apron from the back." But the woman didn't let her leave. "No, don't bother. Maybe this will teach you to be more careful next time." The manager, standing a few meters away, looked uncomfortable. He opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly unsure how to handle the situation. Other staff members exchanged glances, hesitant to intervene. It was obvious the woman expected some kind of fear or reaction that would make Lena feel small. Some customers had stopped eating to watch the scene unfold. Lena could feel the weight of their stares, some sympathetic, others indifferent. She wanted to disappear, to retreat somewhere safe. But she reminded herself that she couldn't run. She had to maintain her composure. She took a slow, steady breath and said, "I will fix this. I promise." She moved toward the back of the restaurant, her hands pressed against her uniform to cover the tear. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat, her chest tight. In the kitchen, she found a spare apron. It was clean, but not the same size, and it smelled faintly of detergent. She slipped it on quickly, trying to ignore the ache in her stomach. Her mind replayed the moment over and over, the abrupt yank, the rip, the woman's laughter. It felt surreal, like something out of a story, not real life. When she returned to the table, she set the apron down quietly on a chair near the woman. "Here's a replacement," she said. "I apologize again for the accident." The woman barely glanced at it. "TCH. It's fine," she said dismissively. "Not like it matters. You're probably used to making mistakes." Lena nodded again, her smile polite but tight. She felt like she was walking a tightrope, every step measured, every word calculated to avoid making things worse. After a few moments, the woman's friends began to chatter among themselves, still glancing at Lena every now and then. Lena tried to attend to her other tables, bringing food, refilling drinks, and clearing plates. She moved with the same careful precision as before, but now every movement felt heavier. Every glance from the center table reminded her of what had just happened. The tension in the restaurant had grown. Staff members were quieter, slower, keeping their distance from the table. Lena could feel the manager watching, his concern evident, but also his hesitation. It was as if everyone was waiting for the next moment of conflict. Lena tried to focus on her work, reminding herself that she had handled worse situations before. But this was different. This was public, personal, humiliating. It wasn't just a customer complaint. It was an attack on her professionalism, her dignity, and her confidence. The woman leaned back in her chair again and spoke to one of her friends, loud enough for Lena to hear. "This place would be nothing without people like us," she said. "Some of the staff clearly don't appreciate it." Lena's fingers tightened around a tray. She took another deep breath, reminding herself that responding with anger would only make things worse. She reminded herself that she was in control of her actions, even if she couldn't control what the woman did. Minutes passed. The restaurant buzzed on around her, the noise of normal activity contrasting with the tension near the center table. Lena continued to serve other customers, her movements precise, her tone polite. She smiled where she could, offered apologies when necessary, and did everything she could to maintain professionalism. She thought about her life outside, the restaurant, her small apartment, the few friends she could count on, the family she wanted to support. She thought about how she worked hard every day and how she deserved respect. And yet, here she was, humiliated by someone who thought status gave her the right to hurt others. For a moment, Lena allowed herself a small, private thought. Maybe this would pass. Maybe the woman's anger would fade. Maybe everything would be okay once the lunch rush ended. But deep down, Lena knew that the incident wouldn't just disappear. It was there now, a mark on her uniform, a mark on her memory, and a mark on her pride. She would carry it with her, but she would not let it define her. The woman finally leaned back and sipped her drink, seemingly satisfied with the drama she had created. Lena continued to move around the restaurant, attending to every table with the same care she always did, yet the sense of dread lingered. She had faced difficult customers before, but this was different. This was intentional, cruel, and public. It left a bitter taste in her mouth, a reminder of how some people used power not to uplift, but to intimidate. Still, Lena refused to break. She reminded herself of her value, of her skill, and of the reason she came to work every day. She could not control the woman's actions, but she could control her own. She could choose professionalism over anger, patience over retaliation, and strength over fear. And in that moment, as she wiped the table and arranged cutlery with care, Lena made a silent promise to herself. No matter what happened, she would not let anyone take away her dignity. Even if her uniform had been torn in public. Lena moved through the restaurant, trying to shake off the tension that had settled over her. She took deep breaths, reminding herself that she had done nothing wrong. She had been polite, careful, and professional. Yet the memory of the woman tearing her uniform still lingered, like a shadow she couldn't shake. Other customers had returned to their meals, and slowly the chatter around her grew back to normal. But every time Lena passed the center table, she felt the same prickling unease. The woman and her friends were still seated there, now speaking quietly among themselves, but their eyes flicked toward her more often than was polite. Lena forced herself to focus on her tasks, clearing tables and refilling drinks, reminding herself that she could not let fear guide her. She glanced at the manager across the room. He had moved closer to the center table, whispering something under his breath to the host. Lena knew he wanted to intervene, but something held him back. She could see it in the way he shifted his weight, hesitant, unsure of how far to step without angering the woman further. A few minutes later, the woman stood suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. All eyes turned toward her. Lena froze, holding a tray mid-step. The woman's face was hard, her lips pressed tight. "This is unacceptable," she announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Do you realize how poorly we are being treated? This is not the level of service I expect." Lena's chest tightened. She had been trained to handle complaints calmly, but this was different. It was no longer about the food or the service. It was about humiliation. The woman had made it personal, turning a small accident into a spectacle. "I'm very sorry for any inconvenience," Lena said politely, her voice steady. "I can check with the kitchen to make sure everything is exactly how you want it." The woman waved her hand dismissively. "Don't bother. I want the manager. Now." Lena felt the pit of her stomach drop. She knew what was coming. The manager approached slowly, his hands raised slightly in a gesture meant to calm the situation. "I'm very sorry for the inconvenience," he said carefully. "What can we do to help you?" The woman smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "I want her to be disciplined," she said, pointing at Lena. "This server is careless, rude, and clearly doesn't respect customers." Lena swallowed hard. She opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. She wanted to explain, to defend herself, but she knew the manager's hesitation meant she had to be careful. Any sudden move could make things worse. The manager's face tightened. He glanced at Lena, then back at the woman. "Please understand," he said, his voice low. "We treat all our staff with respect, and we expect our guests to do the same." The woman laughed, a sound that made Lena's skin crawl. "Respect? Do you know who I am?" she demanded. "I'm the girlfriend of the CEO. You know, the owner of this restaurant. This isn't just a restaurant, it's a business, and I have influence." The words landed like a hammer. Lena felt a tight knot form in her stomach. She had heard such claims before, but hearing it so confidently, so publicly, made her heart race. The manager stiffened, caught between wanting to enforce rules and fearing the supposed power the woman claimed to have. I understand," he said carefully. "But the staff here are professionals. Mistakes happen, and they are not intentional." The woman's eyes narrowed. "I don't care about excuses," she said. "I expect accountability. Now, if this server cannot handle her job, perhaps she should reconsider her position." Lena felt the color drain from her face. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to retreat somewhere safe where no one could see her humiliation. But there was nowhere to hide. The eyes of the customers, the staff, and the manager were all on her. She took a slow breath and stepped forward. "I am truly sorry for any inconvenience," she said. "I will do my best to make sure your order is perfect. That is all I can promise." The woman's smile widened, but it was cruel. "Promises? We want results. Do you understand? Results." Lena nodded silently. She had learned long ago that arguing or showing fear often made situations worse. She knew she had to maintain professionalism, even when everything inside her screamed to lash out. The manager sighed and turned slightly, addressing the host who had seated the woman. "Please check with the kitchen and make sure their order is expedited," he said quietly. "We don't want further issues." Lena moved to the kitchen, her hands shaking slightly as she placed the order ticket down. The chefs glanced at her with raised eyebrows, sensing the tension. She tried to appear calm, but the anxiety was hard to hide. Back in the dining area, she returned to the center table with plates, moving slowly and carefully. She set each dish down with precision, ensuring nothing was out of place. The woman watched every movement, her expression unreadable, waiting for a mistake that never came. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Lena continued her work, attending to other tables as well, but the weight of the central table never left her. She could hear whispered comments from nearby patrons, half curious, half judging. The atmosphere had shifted. The restaurant was no longer just a place for lunch. It had become a stage, and she was in the spotlight. At one point, the woman called her over again. "Yes?" Lena asked, forcing her voice to be steady. "Why did it take so long to bring this?" The woman demanded, gesturing at her plate. Lena looked at the dish. It had been plated neatly and exactly as requested. "It was prepared as quickly as possible," she said. "The kitchen wanted to make sure it was cooked to your specifications." The woman snorted. "Excuses? I don't want excuses. I want efficiency." Lena nodded, keeping her smile polite. She had to remind herself that her calmness was her shield. Any hint of frustration, and the woman might take it further. Nearby, other staff were watching, whispering quietly. The manager kept a careful eye, occasionally glancing toward Lena, as if waiting for the right moment to intervene. But no one stepped in. The woman seemed to enjoy the sense of control she had created. As Lena walked away, she felt her body tighten with stress. Her uniform, though repaired with the spare apron, still felt uncomfortable. Every step, every movement, seemed to draw attention from the table. She reminded herself to stay strong, to do her job well, and to ignore the small voice inside that wanted to break down. Time passed slowly. The lunch rush began to fade, leaving a quieter hum of conversation. But the tension near the center table remained. Lena kept an eye on the clock, hoping the ordeal would soon end. She returned to the kitchen to refill a tray of drinks, her hands steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her body. When she returned with the tray, she noticed something new. The woman had pulled out her phone and was snapping pictures, seemingly documenting every moment. Lena's heart sank. She realized that whatever happened today might follow her beyond the restaurant. She tried not to think about it. She focused on her work, making sure that every table received attention, every plate was perfect, and every drink was filled. Her professionalism was the only thing she could control. At one point, she overheard the woman's friends whispering. "I told you," one said. "She's useless. Your boyfriend is going to hear about this." The words cut through Lena's thoughts like ice. She realized that the situation was no longer just about her uniform or a misplaced dish. The woman was actively trying to escalate it, to make it more than just a moment in the restaurant. Lena took another deep breath and reminded herself of her own strength. She had faced difficult customers before. She had handled impossible situations with calm and grace. She could handle this too. She had no choice. The manager approached her quietly. "Are you okay?" he asked. Lena nodded. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. "I just need to keep working." He gave a small nod, understanding the unspoken pressure she was under. He had not forgotten what had happened, and he had seen the woman's behavior firsthand. But the rules of the restaurant, the fear of escalation, and the woman's claims of influence made him cautious. Lena returned to the floor, moving with deliberate care. She checked on her other tables, cleared empty plates, and refilled drinks. She smiled where she could, nodded politely, and spoke kindly. Every action was measured, controlled. She refused to let the woman's cruelty dictate her behavior. As the afternoon wore on, the woman finally leaned back, seemingly satisfied for the moment. Lena continued her work, aware that the storm was not over, but also proud that she had maintained her professionalism under pressure, even as she wiped down a table, straightened chairs, and prepared for the next wave of customers. Lena knew one thing: she would not let this moment define her. No matter what the woman said or did, she had kept her dignity intact. And in the back of her mind, she knew that the true test of this situation was still to come. Something in the air had changed, a feeling that the next moment could bring a new twist. Lena didn't yet know it, but soon someone very important would enter the restaurant, and the entire situation would shift in ways she could never have predicted. The afternoon sun shone through the large windows, casting long shadows across the tables. Lena moved quickly between orders, clearing plates and refilling drinks, but she could feel her body growing more tired by the minute. Her muscles ached from constant movement, and her mind was exhausted from keeping calm under the relentless pressure of the center table. Every glance from the woman and her friends made her stomach tighten. Every whisper, every smirk, felt like another weight added to her shoulders. The restaurant was quieter now. The lunch rush had ended, leaving a soft hum of conversation and the occasional clatter of dishes being cleared. Lena took a moment to catch her breath, wiping her hands on a clean towel. She tried to remind herself that the worst was over, that the woman might finally leave. But she was wrong. The woman leaned back in her chair, pulling out her phone once again. Lena caught a glimpse of her scrolling quickly, likely sending messages, taking pictures, or both. Lena felt a chill run down her spine. It wasn't just humiliation she feared anymore. It was being publicly exposed. The thought of the woman showing these pictures to someone important made her chest tighten. "Excuse me," the woman said suddenly, her voice sharp enough to make Lena stop in her tracks. "Where is the manager? I want to speak to him now." Lena turned toward the manager, who was standing behind the counter, and nodded toward the woman. The manager sighed and stepped forward cautiously. Lena watched from across the floor as the conversation began. "I've never been treated so poorly in my life," the woman said, speaking loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. "This server was careless, rude, and disrespectful. Do you understand? I expect action." The manager nodded slowly. "I understand your concern," he said carefully. "But please understand that our staff are professionals. Accidents happen, and our servers do their best to provide excellent service." The woman laughed, a sound that grated on Lena's nerves. "Professional? Do you know who I am? I'm the girlfriend of the CEO. He built this restaurant. You all should be honoring people like me, not insulting them." Lena's hands tightened into fists at her sides. She felt like screaming, but she swallowed the urge. She had kept calm this long, and she would not lose control now. Every movement she made from this point forward had to be measured. She had to survive the storm without letting it break her. The manager looked uncomfortable. He glanced briefly at Lena, then back at the woman. "Please, I'm asking you to understand that we treat all our staff with respect," he said. "It is important to maintain a safe and professional environment." The woman's smile was cold. "Respect? I am above respect. I am influence. I can ruin reputations with a single word." She gestured at Lena, who remained still, her face calm but her mind racing. Lena felt her pulse quicken. She had never felt so powerless, standing in a room full of strangers who watched silently as her dignity was being tested. She reminded herself to breathe, to maintain control, and to focus on what she could do: stay professional, stay calm, and continue serving. Just then, the restaurant doors opened. A tall figure stepped inside, dressed in a sharp suit, carrying a calm, confident presence that seemed to command attention without a word. The room seemed to pause for a moment. Conversations faded. The soft hum of activity was replaced by a quiet tension, as if the very air had shifted. The woman in the center table froze. Her phone slipped slightly from her hand. Her confident expression faltered. Lena felt a spark of hope ignite inside her. The man walked forward, scanning the room with calm, observant eyes. He moved slowly, deliberately, as if taking in every detail. The staff straightened automatically, and the manager stepped forward slightly, his posture tense but respectful. The woman suddenly straightened, trying to regain her composure. "Hello," she said, smiling in what she hoped was a friendly, casual way. "I don't believe we've met." The man's eyes met hers, and the smile she expected to see in his eyes was not there. Instead, his expression was calm, measured, and slightly questioning. "I don't believe we have," he said. His tone was polite, but carried authority. "Are you here as a guest, or in some other capacity?" The woman's confident mask faltered. She stammered slightly, searching for the right words. I am here as a guest. Yes, just a guest. My partner." She began, but the man's raised hand stopped her mid-sentence. He turned slightly, his gaze moving to Lena. Lena felt a sudden warmth, not from embarrassment, but from the quiet recognition in his eyes. She had worked tirelessly, remained calm, and now someone who truly mattered was noticing her effort. "Is everything okay here?" The man asked, his voice calm but firm. "I see tension. I would like to understand what is happening." The manager swallowed and spoke up, still careful. "Sir, there was an incident involving a customer and one of our staff. The staff member was doing her best, but there was a misunderstanding." The man nodded, listening carefully. Then he turned his attention fully to the center table. "Would you please explain what you mean by incident?" he asked. The woman hesitated, realizing her carefully rehearsed story might not hold up under scrutiny. "There was a mistake. The server was careless. It caused a problem." The man's eyes narrowed slightly, and his voice took on a firmer tone. "I see." He paused for a moment, then added, "I would like to see this incident from the perspective of the staff member." All eyes turned toward Lena. Her heart beat fast, but she stood tall. She stepped forward slowly, careful to keep her posture straight, her voice calm. "Sir," she began, "I was doing my best to serve all customers quickly and correctly. There was a small accident when the tray moved, and the customer reacted strongly. I apologized immediately and tried to make it right. I did not intend for anything to happen." The man listened without interruption. He nodded slightly, as if absorbing every word. Then he looked at the woman in the center table. "And you?" he asked calmly. "Did you attempt to resolve this politely, or did you take actions that escalated the situation?" The woman hesitated. Her confident mask was gone, replaced by a flicker of fear. I was frustrated. I just wanted better service," she said, her voice quieter than before. The man's gaze was steady. "Frustration is understandable, but it does not justify intimidation or humiliation. Our staff deserve respect. Everyone deserves respect." His eyes met hers directly, and she flinched. The room was silent. Lena felt a wave of relief wash over her. Finally, someone who mattered, someone in power, understood. Her dignity, which had felt so fragile just moments ago, seemed to return. The man turned back to Lena. "Thank you for remaining professional under difficult circumstances," he said. "It is clear you did your job with care and patience. That is exactly the behavior we expect here." Lena felt her chest swell with pride. She nodded, keeping her voice steady. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. The man then addressed the manager and the staff. "Please ensure that all team members feel supported, and that our customers understand the importance of treating staff with respect. We are a business built on people, not intimidation." The woman in the center table shifted uncomfortably. Her friends looked down at their phones, no longer laughing. The woman tried to speak, but the words seemed to stick in her throat. The man's presence, calm yet authoritative, had shifted the balance completely. Finally, he nodded to the manager. "Continue with your day. Ensure the environment remains professional." Then he stepped toward the exit, his calm presence still commanding respect. Staff members straightened instinctively as he left. Lena exhaled deeply, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She looked toward the center table. The woman's expression had changed entirely, from confidence to regret, from control to unease. Lena realized that the power dynamic had shifted, and the woman's attempts to dominate had failed completely. For the first time that afternoon, Lena allowed herself to feel relief. She had endured, remained professional, and finally, someone with real authority had recognized her effort and integrity. The manager approached her quietly. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said, his voice low. "You handled it better than anyone could have expected." Lena nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "Thank you," she said. "I just wanted to do my job." As she returned to her duties, clearing tables and serving drinks, she felt a renewed sense of confidence. The ordeal at the center table was over, and the lesson was clear. Professionalism, patience, and integrity mattered far more than empty threats or false power. The woman in the center table remained for a few more minutes, quietly finishing her meal. Her friends whispered among themselves, no longer laughing or pointing. The atmosphere in the restaurant slowly returned to normal. Lena continued her work, aware that today had tested her in ways she had never imagined. But she also knew that she had proven something important to herself, to her coworkers, and to anyone watching. Dignity and professionalism could withstand even the harshest of tests. And in that moment, as she moved between tables with careful precision, Lena realized that the true strength she carried was not just in her work, but in her ability to remain composed, patient, and proud. No matter what challenges came her way, the afternoon had settled into a calm rhythm after the chaos at the center table. Customers spoke quietly, staff moved efficiently, and the soft hum of conversation returned to fill the restaurant. Lena continued her work, clearing tables, refilling drinks, and checking orders. She felt a quiet pride as she moved among the tables, knowing that she had maintained her professionalism despite the earlier confrontation. Even so, she couldn't ignore the lingering tension from the woman who had caused so much trouble. The woman and her friends sat silently now, finishing their meal without any of the earlier arrogance. Their whispers had stopped, replaced by a quiet unease. Lena kept her distance, her focus on her work, but she noticed that they avoided eye contact with her. It was a small, satisfying shift, and it reminded her that patience often had its own rewards. The manager approached her quietly as she wiped down a table near the back. "I just want to say, you handled that incredibly well," he said. "Most people would have been shaken, but you stayed calm and professional. That's not easy." Lena smiled faintly, feeling some of the tension release from her shoulders. "Thank you," she said softly. "I just wanted to do my job right." The manager nodded. "And you did. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." As Lena returned to the floor, she noticed a subtle change in the way other staff interacted with her. The younger servers who often looked to her for guidance smiled quietly, offering encouragement. Even the host who had seated the difficult woman earlier gave her a small nod of approval. Lena realized that her calmness and professionalism had not gone unnoticed. Her actions had set an example, showing that dignity and patience mattered just as much as skill. Meanwhile, the woman in the center table finally gathered her belongings. She looked around the restaurant, her face pale and uneasy, as if realizing that the sense of power she had assumed earlier was gone. Her friends followed quietly, no longer whispering or laughing. Lena observed from a distance, keeping her composure, but she could feel a sense of quiet satisfaction knowing the tables had turned. Before leaving, the woman approached the manager, her voice subdued. I apologize for the way I behaved," she said quickly, glancing toward Lena. "It was inappropriate." The manager nodded. "Thank you. We appreciate that. We expect all guests to treat our staff with respect. That includes speaking politely and addressing concerns calmly." The woman hesitated, then nodded and left the restaurant with her friends. The doors closed behind them, and a quiet sense of relief settled over the space. Lena exhaled deeply, finally allowing herself a moment to relax. The storm had passed. After the customers had left, Lena gathered with the rest of the staff in the small break area. Everyone seemed relieved, and the mood was lighter than it had been all afternoon. The manager spoke to the group, his voice warm and encouraging. "I want to acknowledge how well everyone handled today," he said. Lena, in particular, remained calm under extreme pressure. That is something to be proud of. This was a difficult situation, but it showed how important professionalism, patience, and respect are in this restaurant. The staff nodded, some smiling at Lena with admiration. She felt a mix of humility and pride. She had never sought recognition, but she realized that standing firm in the face of difficulty had earned her not only respect, but also confidence in herself. Lena returned to her duties as the evening crowd began to trickle in. The atmosphere was calmer, more relaxed, and she moved with renewed energy. The earlier events had taught her a valuable lesson about staying composed, even when others tried to intimidate or humiliate her. She could not control other people's behavior, but she could control how she responded. Later that evening, the manager called Lena aside. "I spoke with the owner after the incident," he said quietly. "He was concerned about what happened and wanted me to let you know that you handled yourself exactly the way he would have hoped. Your professionalism made a strong impression." Lena felt a warmth spread through her chest. Recognition from someone in authority was meaningful, but more than that, it confirmed what she had always believed, that remaining composed and true to oneself mattered above all else. "I'm grateful," Lena said softly. "I just wanted to do my best." "And you did," the manager replied. "Never forget that. You represent the values of this restaurant every day, and today you proved how strong and capable you are." As the night drew on, Lena finished her shift and stepped outside. The cool evening air felt refreshing against her skin. She walked slowly to her apartment, reflecting on the events of the day. The stress, the humiliation, the tension, it had all tested her, but she had endured. She realized that challenges like these were not just obstacles. They were opportunities to grow, to prove her resilience, and to strengthen her confidence. At home, Lena sat quietly for a while, replaying the day in her mind. She thought about the woman who had tried to intimidate her and the power she had assumed she had. Lena realized that true power came from composure, patience, and integrity, not from fear or status. The woman's attempts to assert control had failed because Lena had refused to let them succeed. The next day at the restaurant, the atmosphere was calm and professional. Staff greeted Lena with smiles, and customers who had witnessed the incident whispered quietly, expressing their respect and support. Lena felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that the respect she had earned was genuine, built on her own actions rather than intimidation or authority. Even the manager seemed more relaxed. "I think we all learned something yesterday," he said to the team. "Respect and professionalism go both ways, and it's important to recognize when someone demonstrates that, even under pressure." Lena nodded, feeling a sense of quiet pride. She had not sought praise, but she recognized the importance of acknowledging her own strength. The experience had tested her, yes, but it had also reinforced her belief in doing what was right, even when it was difficult. Over the next few days, the story of the incident quietly spread among staff and regular customers. But it was told not as a scandal, but as an example of professionalism and integrity. People spoke about Lena's composure, her patience, and her ability to handle a difficult situation with grace. For her, it was a reminder that true respect is earned, not demanded. One evening, as Lena closed up the restaurant, the manager approached her with a small smile. "You've inspired a lot of people," he said. "Not just the staff, but the customers too. People notice how someone carries themselves under pressure. You did that today." Lena smiled softly. "I just tried to stay calm and do my job," she said. "But I guess that's enough sometimes." "Yes," he replied. "Sometimes that is more than enough." "It's everything?" Lena left the restaurant that night feeling lighter than she had in days. The stress, the humiliation, the confrontation, it had all passed. She knew challenges would come again, but she also knew that she had the strength to face them. She had proven to herself that she could remain composed, patient, and proud, no matter what others tried to throw her way down. As she walked home, Lena thought about the lessons of the past few days. Power is not measured by status, money, or influence. True power is the ability to maintain dignity, respect, and patience, even when others try to undermine you. She had experienced fear, humiliation, and pressure, but she had survived. And she had grown stronger because of it. Back in her small apartment, Lena reflected on the day the CEO's girlfriend had caused chaos in the restaurant. At first, she had felt helpless, humiliated, and overwhelmed. But by the end, she realized that the real victory was not in revenge or punishment. It was in standing firm, maintaining professionalism, and refusing to let anyone take away her dignity. Her phone buzzed with messages from her coworkers, congratulating her quietly and sharing their respect. Lena smiled as she read them, realizing that the bonds she had built with her colleagues were stronger than any threat or intimidation. She felt proud of herself, proud of her work, and proud of the way she had handled an impossible situation. That night, as she lay in bed, Lena felt a calm satisfaction she hadn't experienced in a long time. She had faced a challenge that could have shaken her, but she had proven her strength, her resilience, and her ability to remain true to herself. She understood now that her worth was not determined by the opinions of others, but by her own actions and the respect she gave to herself and to those around her. And with that thought, Lena finally allowed herself to rest, knowing that she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever before. The storm had passed, and she was ready to face whatever came next with courage, professionalism, and pride.